Here in the cemetery of Père Lachaise, outside the gates of Paris, sleep forever in silence the great poets, artists, painters and philosophers whose genius has enriched the culture of their land. Here among them, I too lie buried, an exile in death as I was in life. This is the story of my tragedy, a tragedy that began in England at the turn of the century.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have enjoyed the evening immensely. The actors have given a delightful rendering of a charming play, and your own appreciation has been most intelligent. I congratulate you on the success of your performance, which persuades me that you think almost as highly of this play as I do myself.
Who's the young man in the box with Lionel Johnson?
Lord Queensberry's son, Alfred Douglas.
Here is Oscar. Thank you, my good friends, my darling wife, Robbie. Thank you for thinking of me tonight. I approve. I'm always thinking about myself. And I expect everybody else to do the same. That is what is called sympathy, especially tonight. It's easy to sympathize with the misfortunes of a friend, but it takes a really fine nature to sympathize with his success. And now I ask the impossible. Pretend that I'm not here.
Oscar, it was superb.
Quite the best thing since Congreve.
With that opinion, Lord Crane, I entirely concur.
Oscar, I'm afraid that Lady Broxley is bearing down upon us.
Yes, she's wearing far too much rouge and not enough clothes. Always a sign of despair in a woman. Grotesque, isn't she?
No, not at all. She has the remains of a really remarkable ugliness, and she prides herself upon it.
Oscar, my dear, it was brilliant. And only your first play. I can't imagine what you'll do as you improve.
Only mediocrities improve, Lady Broxley. You know my wife.
Mrs. Wilde, I know your father quite well. A delightfully wicked man. He always says I'm the ugliest woman in London. Don't you agree with him?
Well, I and my father seldom agree about anything, Lady Broxley.
But you, Oscar, you surely agree that I'm the ugliest woman in London.
In the world, madam, in the world. Lionel, how good of you to come.
Oscar, I can add nothing to what you've heard already tonight. All I might say would be glowing repetition.
Then say it again, Lionel. I adore praise.
May I present Mr. Oscar Wilde, Lord Alfred Douglas.
How do you do, Lord Alfred?
Mr. Wilde, this has been the most wonderful experience of my life.
You must come and say that to me when you're full of years. Do you know my wife?
Oscar, you've given me so much pleasure tonight.
And you, Richard, have given me so much pain.
I? Pain? How?
You treated me very badly in your last book.
Oscar, you must be dreaming. I never so much as mentioned you in my book.
That was it, Richard.
Very well, Oscar. I promise that next time I shall mention you prominently. But I cannot promise that it will be to your liking.
Thank you. That is the price we all pay for being thoroughly understood.
Madam, I have...
And have you decided what your new play shall be, my dear Oscar?
A success. You are very sure of yourself. But the public may not approve.
Then it was the public that fails.
May I join you, Lord Alfred?
Yes, Mr. Wilde.
There is a melancholy in an empty theatre.
No, it still echoes with your success. I came here to pretend that I was you.
Mr. Wilde, is that you?
Yes?
Congratulations, sir. A wonderful play.
Thank you. May I know your name?
Odell, sir, the electrician.
Thank you, Mr. Odell. Without you, there would have been no success tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Wilde. Good night, sir.
Good night.
That man will remember you always, success or failure.
And no doubt we shall both remember him. You came here to pretend to be me. Why?
Because I envied you. I think I even hated you. Oh, I was bitterly jealous. No, don't laugh. It's no laughing matter.
Laughter is not at all a bad way to begin a friendship. They tell me you're up at Oxford, at Magdalen, my old college, and that you're a poet. You see, already we have much in common.
Oscar? Oh, am I interrupting?
No, my dear.
Your guests are leaving.
Forgive me, Mrs. Wilde. The only excuse I have for keeping your husband to myself is that I'm utterly selfish and greedy.
Then we have a great bond, Lord Alfred.
Good night, Lord Alfred.
Good night, Oscar. Thank you, Mr. Odell. Without you, there would have been no success tonight.
Telegram for you, Oscar.
Open it, dear. Read it.
My dear friend, laughter is not at all a bad beginning for a friendship. I ask you to come up to Oxford at once and help me to find laughter again. I'm in deep trouble. Bosie. Who is Bosie?
Lord Alfred Douglas.
Oh, the poor boy. To send that after meeting you only once. He seems such a proud young man.
Yes.
He must be in serious trouble.
Yes.
Oscar, you will go?
My darling, how can I go? Bourbon-Tree has set the first rehearsal. He's engaged the cast. I have the whole of this act to revise.
I know you, Oscar. If you don't go, you'll not be able to work.
My darling, it's quite impossible.
You've never refused your help to anyone. You shouldn't refuse it now. I was thinking of our boys, Oscar. If ever they should need help.
My darling, it's perfectly heartless the way you always bring out the good in me.
I do love you so much.
All right, now, once more, tell me what happened.
But I've told you over and over again.
No, I want to hear it again. Everything you did, everything you said, everything.
Well, I was lonely. And I'm afraid Indiscreet.
Indiscreet.
I was looking for affection.
No, I don't want the justification, just the problem.
I sent for you as a friend. I thought you'd be kind and sympathetic and understand.
It's easy to be kind and sympathetic to someone one doesn't care anything about. I wouldn't be helping you if I let you wallow in a sea of self-pity. Now, we only have a few moments before this boy arrives. I want to know all about him. Who he is, what he is, how serious this threat is.
Oh, it's serious enough, all right. It might mean my being sent down from Oxford altogether. Even worse. He threatens to show the letters to the Dean.
The letters. You've talked of the letters, around the letters, about the letters. You've been determinedly obscure. What did you write in those letters?
They weren't my letters.
Ah.
They were from a friend. 3 or 4. Only one could be embarrassing.
Who is this friend?
A boy I knew.
Knew?
The letters were from young Russet, Lord Russet's son. Doesn't that name mean anything to you?
Go on.
Well, he was in his first year here, and for a time we were great friends.
And then?
And then he started to bore me.
You dropped him.
He wrote to me endlessly, annoyingly, until finally he wrote...
The letter that may prove embarrassing. What was in that letter?
A sonnet. Marlowe's love poem. Utter rot. Ended up with threatening suicide if I wouldn't see him. Surely I've a right to choose my own friends. I will not be emotionally blackmailed.
What happened to the boy?
Oh, an accident. He was alone in a punt, and he couldn't swim. They found his body in the charwell. It was an accident, it was.
All right. It was an accident. We'll do what we can. Now, Bosie, you must tell me everything about this blackmailer. I must know all about him.
His name is Cobble.
Have you any idea where he comes from?
His father is a hall porter in one of the hotels in town.
How old is he?
28.
How did the letters come into his possession?
He stole them.
Where'd you keep them?
In the drawer of this writing table.
But how did he get into your room?
He was my guest.
Your guest? A porter's son?
Well, I thought he might be amusing. Oscar, wouldn't it be better if we were to pay him, to put an end to it?
No. That would only be putting a beginning to it. He must be made never to speak about it again. Sit down. You're to say nothing. Not one word. Come in. Well, you have one virtue at least, punctuality.
Aye?
What's your name?
Look here. I come to see his lordship.
Exactly. You came to see his lordship? Why?
It's a bit of private business. Yeah, that's what it is, between him and me. Nothing to do with nobody else, eh? Look, you said we'd be private-like. And what do I find? What's it got to do with him?
Got a great deal to do with me. I am Inspector Lowe, Scotland Yard.
Scotland Yard? I ain't done nothing.
You call demanding money by minutes nothing. I call it 10 years in Wandsworth jail. What's your name?
Cobble, sir. Please, your lordship, tell him. Tell him I didn't...
How many times have you been in prison before?
Prison? Never. Well, I've never been in prison, sir.
You'll find that out at the yard. You needn't worry, your lordship. This rogue will never menace you again. Or anybody else for the next 10 years.
10 years? Oh, please, your lordship, don't let him take me. I'm not a bad and I've never been in any trouble. Always hard working. It was just a joke, sir. A joke. I meant no harm. Here, see. I've got the letters here. Here, take them, your lordship.
These letters are now evidence of your crime. Evidence that will earn you 10 years in prison.
Oh, please, your lordship. You've got the letters. I don't want nothing. I've got an old mother. It'll kill her. Please. Oh, never again. Please, let me go.
Well, I don't know. It's up to his lordship. He's the prosecutor in this case. You put him to a great deal of trouble and expense.
Oh, please, your lordship, what can I do? Look, I don't have much money. 2 sovereigns, that's all. Take them. Please take them, your lordship, and forgive me.
Well, perhaps for the sake of his mother.
Yes, indeed, for his mother. You're a very lucky young rogue. If it had been left to me, however, his lordship has a tender heart. Now, get out.
Oh, thank you, your lordship. Thank you very much, your lordship.
Come on, get out.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, your lordship. Thank you,
Just
sir.
a moment. Remember, you are never to communicate with his lordship again. Do you understand?
I understand, your lordship. Thank you very much. Thank you, your lordship.
You made that young man very happy. But I'm afraid he's leading a wonderfully wicked life.
Oscar, I shall always be grateful to you.
You mustn't say that. Gratitude must finally become a burden and make friendship impossible.
But it's what I feel. You were superb. You would have made a great actor.
I adore acting. Shall I tell you the great drama of my life? It is that I put my genius into my life, but only my talent into my work. Writing bores me so.
How strange. I can't believe it's true.
Nothing is ever quite true.
But for me, writing is the only thing that matters. The only thing I can care about. Poetry.
Then you must publish one of those slim volumes that are so much in vogue. You must bring out a book that is all margin, full of beautiful unwritten thought. It must be dedicated to me. And Aubrey Beardsley shall do the illustrations.
Beardsley has a superb line, but he doesn't know where to draw it.
My dear Posey, I shouldn't have been ashamed to have said that myself. And now I must get back to London.
Oscar,
Yes?
must you go just yet?
I have work to do.
Or couldn't you just stay the night at an hotel? Have supper with me. I feel that suddenly I can talk. You bring me such a sense of peace.
I'm afraid it's not possible.
At least you'll have a glass of wine with me before you go.
Very well. Posey, you won't forget to burn the letters.
Would you like to read them before I do so?
No. There can be no disgrace in the true expression of love. But without it, a man can be coarsened and degraded in mind, body, and soul.
I've never known love. Not even as a child. My mother tried, but my father is a madman who... Oh, I've searched for it, all right. But there is no love, anywhere.
One cannot find love by searching for it, Posey. It comes to us unbidden when we give it to others.
To Oscar Wilde, the Lord of Language and the King of Life.
Thank you, Posey, for that charming gesture. I hope you'll never have cause to regret it. And now, if I'm to stay the night, I must send a telegram.
I'll call my scout.
And so began our friendship. It started with laughter in the company of mutual friends. At dinner parties I gave, you were always ready to laugh at my stories, and when the other guests had gone, we would sit on together, talking and drinking in our private world. But there were other parties, and the guests here were of a very different kind. Behind the drawn blinds of tailors' rooms in Little College Street, there would also be laughter. This was a side of our friendship about which the world knew little. But they were not long to remain in ignorance. A few months after our friendship commenced, when we'd finished luncheon one day at the Café Royal, I met your father, the mad Lord Queensberry, and heard for the first time the accusations that he was making against us all over London. His campaign of slander and abuse soon had its effect. Wherever we were seen together, we were the focus of all eyes, and resentful of the growing disapproval around us, we now openly consorted with those whom before we had met only in the discreet shadows of tailors' rooms.
Although aware of the scandal our presence now caused everywhere, even in Paris, there was no turning back. We defied society, and society at first surprised, and then resentful and outraged, showed its disapproval and left us to ourselves. Back in London, the acts of disapproval became even bolder, and old friends who had once greeted us so warmly now refused to take my hand. We were now only too painfully aware of the gathering storm which threatened us and must finally break.
Good evening, Oscar.
Robbie, what are you doing here? Is something the matter?
No, it's just that it's been so long since we've seen each other. All your old friends, they ask about you.
You make me feel very guilty. Come in and have a drink.
Let's just walk up and down, talk quietly.
In the fog?
The fog will help me to speak.
You're very serious.
Yes.
London is too full of fogs and serious people. Whether the serious people produce the fogs or the fogs produce the serious people, I really don't know. But the whole thing rather gets on my nerves.
Oscar, do you know what is being said about you in London?
Yes, and I don't want to hear it. I love scandal about other people, but scandal about myself doesn't amuse me. It hasn't the charm of novelty.
You must avoid giving your enemies a chance to gossip.
How would you have me do that?
By being more careful of the company you keep, and less extravagant about the theories you're always propounding.
What theories?
Your theories about life, your theories about pleasure.
Pleasure's the only thing worth having a theory about. One must be true to oneself. One's own life, that's the important thing.
If one lives one's own life, one may have to pay a terrible price for it.
One's overcharged for everything nowadays.
Oscar! Can't you see how you're being drawn into a bitter family feud? Lord Queensberry's stamping round the West End, threatening you with all dire things if you don't stop seeing Alfred. Father and son, they'll both use you as a battlefield.
I wonder. I adore Bersey, but you know, I sometimes feel as if I'd given away my whole soul to someone who treats it as if it were a flower to wear in his coat. You're right, my old friend. Of course you always are. A man in my position cannot afford scandal. I promise you I'll be more careful in future.
Oh, I can't tell you how relieved I am, Oscar.
And now, thank heaven, we can stop being serious. You'll come and have a drink at the club.
No, thank you, Oscar. I think I'll take this cab. Cab!
All right. Good night, my old friend.
Good night, Oscar.
Robbie.
Yes?
You needn't worry. I promise I'll never again give you the slightest cause for anxiety.
I'm sure you won't. Good night, Oscar.
I finally learned of your infamous conduct at Oxford. Oh, yes, I know everything. You and that brute Wilde managed to cover up for a time, didn't you? But you were sent down in disgrace after all. And your loathsome conduct ever since with that... Stop eating those grapes, damn it.
They're not very good grapes. Hothouse.
Yes, like you. White-livered, pasty-faced, hothouse, grape.
A grape has neither liver, white, nor face, pasty.
You insolent loathsome. You know the whole of London is reeking with this hideous scandal between you and the man Wilde. People ask what's his father up to. Why doesn't he interfere? But that I'll do. That I'll do. This scandal must cease and must cease at once.
I've no objection to being talked about.
You no objection?
You see, a man who is much talked about is always attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. However, if you want this scandal, as you call it, to cease, it's really a simple matter. You must simply persuade the gossip merchants to simply stop gossiping.
You miserable, insolent creature. What you want's a damn good beating.
Your favorite solution, with women, with dogs, and with walnut trees.
You must be demented. Filled to the skull with insanity.
If I am, it's the only thing you've ever given me as your son.
If you are my son, you proved to me how right I was to leave your mother, not run the risk of bringing more creatures like you into the world. When you were a child, it made me sick. Sick, I tell you, just to look at you. A sick, up-looking creature. And now I know why. Saw you and that brute Wilde in such loathsome relationship as I'd never heard of or seen between two men. Men! No, you stay here, damn you. Stay here and listen to what I've got to say to you.
Then say what you mean. I dare you to say it.
I make no charge against you, But to pose as a thing is as bad as to be it. If I catch you with that man again in a restaurant, in a club, or on the streets, I'll put my cane to him. If I have to shoot that monster down, I shall be justified in protecting my so-called son.
Protecting his son. Playing the loving, outraged father. In the hotel suite that he keeps for his own peculiar purposes. What about the years when we needed your fatherly love and protection? You gave more protection and love to your horses, your hounds, and your whores.
Be quiet, you!
You ignored us, or came home only to bully us. Turned us out of the house, my mother, me, all of us, at 24 hours' notice, to bring home a party from Ascot. A party which included your mistress. You can find us both tonight, at the opening of his new play.
I'm not at all sure that I shall take a call this evening. I took one last month at the Haymarket. It made me feel rather like a German band.
I agree.
How can you possibly agree, Alex? An actor-manager like yourself spends his whole life taking curtain calls.
I mean, I agree that you shouldn't take a call tonight. In fact, I suggest you don't even sit in your box.
Really? Where would you have me sit? On the stage?
I don't think you should be in the audience at all.
What, and have an empty seat in the house?
Why can't you be serious? You know perfectly well the situation we face with Lord Queensberry.
I thought you'd taken steps to see that he wasn't admitted.
I have done my best. But if he does manage to slip through, there will be a scandal.
Well, you've always thought that my play was too frivolous. Queensberry might provide the one scene that is lacking.
Now look here, Oscar. Just you listen to me. Don't you think that for once you might consider me and the rest of the cast? The way you live your life is your own affair. But the way we present your play tonight is ours. How can you expect a good performance if you deliberately distract the attention of the audience by the presence of Lord Alfred and yourself in the box?
It's my custom to sit in the box on these occasions. Not to do so tonight might be to provoke gossip.
Provoking gossip seems to be your main occupation at the moment, and you seem to be highly successful at it.
Lord Alfred Douglas would like to see you, sir.
Tell Lord Alfred I regret I cannot receive him now.
He says his business is urgent.
Nevertheless, I cannot see him now.
Very good, sir. We'll just call the 5 minutes.
Well, I'll be leaving you. All my best wishes for your great success tonight and that of my play.
Thank you, Oscar.
You'll write and let me know how it goes, won't you? I shall be most interested to hear.
Then you will not be in the audience?
No. I don't know what Bosie is going to say. He bought a brand new tail coat.
I must see Alexander at once.
Not now.
My father is stomping about outside like a madman with a disgusting bouquet of vegetables. He's been refused admission at every entrance.
Bosie, I have something more important to talk to you about.
There is nothing more important just now. Oscar. Oscar, the important thing is that we must do something about my father. I believe he's stark mad. He must be stopped. Put away once and for all. He's dangerous.
He's not the only one, Bosie. Do you remember that? It's a copy of a letter I once wrote to you.
You always keep copies of your letters.
It's not my copy. A man called at my house this morning and offered to sell me the original.
Did you buy it?
No, Bosie. But how did that letter come to be in his possession?
I don't know. I must have left it lying about, I suppose. I'm sorry.
I write you a beautiful letter, and you leave it lying around. You were always careless with letters, weren't you, Bosie? Your habits haven't changed much.
Oscar, the important thing now is my father.
Keep me out of the theater, would they? Well, I'll get in by the stage door. Ah, there you are. I thought I told you never to speak to this man again.
Good evening, Lord Queensberry. You're very early with your congratulations.
You've got to stop seeing this right into the summer, mind you hear?
And now you can go home.
Yes, and he's going with me.
You're a mad, vicious monster.
Vicious, is it? Vicious. You, both of you, kicked out of a London hotel at a moment's notice for your disgusting behavior.
That is a lie.
If I catch you with this sicked-up so-called son of mine again in a public place, I'll put my cane to both of you.
What a funny little man you are.
I'll destroy you! I'll destroy you! I'll go around town and I'll destroy both of you! I'll destroy both of you! I'll destroy you, you filthy brute! I'll go around London and I'll tell all the hotel proprietors if I catch you in that white-livered son of mine, you vicious, degenerate, brute, wild!
Good evening, my lord.
Give that to Oscar Wilde.
Yes, my lord. Robbie has a positive mania for self-destruction. Ah, up I go.
You threw a 4.
Well, what of it?
You moved 5 places.
Well, everyone cheats at snakes and ladders. It's half the fun.
If you're not going to play properly, it seems a pity to play at all.
Well, it was you who suggested the game.
I thought it might pass the time pleasantly. I was mistaken.
Now, whose turn is it? You know, you two are worse than the children. They always lose their tempers when they play snakes and ladders, but I always make them finish the game.
Well, I don't propose to finish the game. What will you do with me, Constance? Send me off to bed?
I think it's time we were all in bed.
What could have delayed Oscar all these hours?
Alexander probably wanted to discuss the reception of the play with him. Perhaps they're all waiting somewhere for the morning papers.
He's never troubled to sit up for the notices before. Why now, suddenly? Alfred, what happened this evening?
You know what happened. Oscar had the greatest triumph of his life.
Strange triumph. The author not in the house during the performance. Not a single one of our friends here to congratulate him. I don't know. I fear... I just don't know.
Constance, my dear, you're just imagining things.
I'm imagining nothing. Alfred, I'm his wife. I must know.
My dear Constance, there's nothing to know. Oscar may have offended 1 or 2 people in our society with his views on life and morality, but that's the penalty that all artists must pay when they tell the truth.
I'm tired of being lied to. And what is worse, being shut out of my husband's life.
You're not shut out, Constance. His love for you and the children is the most important thing in his life.
Oscar, where have you been?
My dear, on my way home, I fell among clever people. One cannot go anywhere nowadays without meeting clever people. The thing is becoming an absolute menace. I wish to heaven there were a few fools left. Bosie, Robbie will have a drink.
We were just leaving, Oscar.
No, don't go. I want to talk to you. My dear, what I have to say to Robbie will only take a moment, but I'm sure you'd rather go to bed.
I'd rather stay and hear it, Oscar.
I'd rather you went to bed, my darling, and I shall come up and say good night in a few moments. Don't worry, the play's going to be an enormous success, I'm sure of that. And now you and I can take a little holiday together. We'll go abroad somewhere where the sun is always shining.
Oscar, I must know.
No? Know what?
What you're going to discuss with Robbie and Alfred. I've a right to know what's troubling you, Oscar.
But it's only a tiresome business matter about a contract.
Then why can't it be discussed now, in front of me?
Oh, but it can. Of course it can. Robbie, it's about the French rights of Lady Windermere's fan. As you know, I sold the play originally to the Athene Theatre, who failed to produce it. I now claim the right to dispose of it elsewhere. Mr. Blanc is disputing this. He's threatening me with an injunction. What do you think?
Well, you must insist that your original contract is now invalid. Tell them all to go to the devil.
I quite agree. Thank you, Robbie. Bosie, what do you think?
I think you should tell Constance the truth.
Thank you, Bosie.
Very well, if you won't tell her, I will. My father objects to my friendship with Oscar. He called at the theater tonight and made a disgusting scene. He had to be forcibly removed by the police.
But why? Why should he object too strongly?
My dear, Lord Queensberry is convinced that I'm dissuading Bosie from leading a sober and useful life and encouraging him in the folly of writing poetry.
Oh, Oscar, is that what he objects to?
Lord Alfred writes beautiful poetry. How could your father be so foolish? Oscar, you must talk to him, make him understand.
Yes, my dear, I'll try.
I'm afraid that's not quite true, Constance. My father is utterly mad, and he's got it into his head that our friendship is not altogether platonic.
Constance, now you must let me tell you everything.
I don't want to hear anymore.
I'm sorry, Oscar, but she had to know.
Why did you do it, Bosie? To Constance, who'll never hurt you, who's always been your friend.
I thought it kinder to tell her the truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple.
Oscar, we ought to go.
No, don't go. Posey has merely precipitated matters by a few hours. Constance was sure to know in any case, but I should have preferred to have been the one who told her. After the theater, I went to the club. The hall porter handed me a card. He said it'd been left by Lord Queensberry.
To Oscar Wilde, posing as a sodomite.
They walked the streets for 2 hours. What am I to do?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing. Oscar, you will throw this card on the fire.
And have him leap in after it?
You must not even think of bringing Queensberry into court in a libel action. Remember, he wrote posing. No matter how weak a case Queensberry may bring in justification, no jury will give a verdict against him. I'm going to burn this card.
Your advice shows you're no friend of Oscar's. You must listen to me. With this card left open at your club for all to see, don't you realize if you do nothing about it, London becomes impossible for you?
And if you lose in the prosecution of Queensberry, the whole world becomes impossible.
How can he
Both of you, I can't bear it anymore. Not now.
Oh, all right, Oscar, good night. But I beg you to think carefully about what I've said.
With this card in our hands, we can put him to hard labor for 7 years. 7 years. You must, Oscar, you must take a warrant for his arrest. I will get the money for the prosecution, any amount. You must prosecute my father.
Posey, you weren't looking for a friend. You were looking for a weapon.
And the jurors aforesaid, upon their oath aforesaid, do further present that the said John Sholto Douglas, Marquis of Queensberry, contriving and maliciously intending to injure the said Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde, and to deprive him of his good name, fame, credit, and reputation, and to provoke the said Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde, and to excite him to commit a breach of the peace, and to bring him into public contempt, scandal, and disgrace, and within the jurisdiction of the said court, unlawfully and maliciously and wickedly did write and publish, and cause to be written and published, of him, the said Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde, a false, scandalous, malicious, and defamatory libel, in the form of a card reading, to Oscar Wilde, posing as sodomite, to the great damage, scandal, and disgrace of said Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde, and against the peace of Our Lady the Queen, her crown and dignity. John Sholto Douglas, Marquis of Queensberry, how plead you?
Not guilty, by reason that the libel is true and published for the public benefit.
The defendant pleads not guilty.
Is the prosecution ready to open? Sir Edward?
May it please you, my lord. Gentlemen of the jury, the libel charged against the defendant was published in the form of a visiting card left by Lord Queensberry at the club to which Mr. Wilde belongs. On that card, his lordship wrote, Oscar Wilde, posing as sodomite. The accusation contained in those words does not suggest guilt of the actual offense. Rather that Mr. Wilde appears to be, or desires to appear to be, a person guilty of, or inclined to the commission of, that grave offense. But the defendant, by his plea, has raised a much graver issue. In that plea, there is a series of allegations mentioning the names of several persons and impugning Mr. Wilde's conduct with those persons. In justification of the original libel, Lord Queensberry cites Mr. Wilde's writing, his literary work, as being indicative of his posing. You may notice some inconsistency here, but we shall see. Mr. Wilde first became aware that certain statements were being made against his character in this way. A man named Alfred Wood had been given some clothes by Lord Alfred Douglas. In the pocket of a coat, he found 4 letters, which had been written by Mr. Wilde to Lord Alfred. Wood went to Mr. Wilde in an unsuccessful attempt to sell him the letters. Later, Wood told Mr. Wilde that he was in great distress, wanted to go off to America. Mr. Wilde gave him 15 or 20 pounds, and Wood, in gratitude, gave up 3 very ordinary letters. The 4th letter he retained. Later, Mr. Wilde was approached by a man called Allen. He attempted to blackmail Mr. Wilde, and Mr. Wilde, in his testimony, will tell you what happened on that occasion. This Allen is an uneducated man. I can only explain his actions by supposing that he did not know that this letter had been written in the form of a prose poem. It was not an ordinary letter at all. But here is the letter itself, in the classic 14 lines of the sonnet. My own boy, sonnet is quite lovely, and it is a marvel that those red rose-leaf lips of yours should have been made no less for music of song than for madness of kisses. Your slim gilt soul walks between passion and poetry. I know Hyacinthus, whom Apollo loved so madly, was yours, Oscar. The words of this letter may appear extravagant to those in the habit of writing commercial correspondence. But Mr. Wilde is a poet. And this letter is considered by him as a prose sonnet in answer to a poem which Lord Alfred Douglas had sent him, an expression of true poetic feeling. Whatsoever to the hateful and repulsive suggestions put to it in this case. Now, there are 2 counts in Lord Queensberry's plea of justification, which are extremely curious. Firstly, that Mr. Wilde caused to be published a certain immoral work in the form of a novel called The Picture of Dorian Gray, and secondly, that Mr. Wilde joined in publishing an immoral work in the form of a magazine called The Chameleon. These are 2 very gross allegations. But again, we shall see. I call Mr. Oscar Wilde.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence which I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
State your name and age, please.
Oscar O'Flaherty, Fingal Wills Wilde. I am 39 years of age.
Are you a novelist and dramatist?
I believe I'm well known in that capacity.
Only answer the questions, please.
Are you known as the author of the novel The Picture of Dorian Gray and of 4 plays successfully produced in London?
I am.
Will you tell us what happened with regard to the letter you heard me read?
A man calling himself Allen called upon me and offered to sell me the letter. I told him that there was no reason for me to buy it, as it was shortly to be published in the form of a prose sonnet in a delightful magazine, and I offered to send him a copy.
Did Allen then go away?
Yes, with the letter.
Did you make any attempt to stop him?
No, but a few days later, a man named Cleburne came to see me to return the letter. He said it had been decided that it was no use trying to rent me.
Did you pay him for the letter?
No, I gave him half a sovereign for his trouble and some excellent advice, for both of which he seemed grateful. He remarked that there was good and bad in all of us. I told him that he was a born philosopher, and on that he left.
And this is the original letter which you wrote to Lord Alfred Douglas and which you produce here today?
Yes.
Your attention has been called to the plea and to the names of those persons with whom your conduct is impugned. Is there any truth in those allegations?
There is no truth whatever in any one of them.
May it please you, my lord. Mr. Wilde, you stated your age was 39. I think you are more than 40.
I had no wish to pose as being young. I am 39 or 40.
You were born 16th of October, 1854?
You have my certificate there. That settles the matter.
But being born in 1854 makes you more than 40?
Oh, very well.
And what age is Lord Alfred Douglas?
About 24.
About 24. You stayed with him at many places?
Yes.
At Oxford, at Brighton?
Yes.
And at Cromer, and at Torquay?
Yes.
Did you ever take rooms in addition to your house in Tite Street?
Yes, at 10 St. James's Place, for the purpose of...
We shall come to the purpose later. This, Mr. Wilde, is the magazine, The Chameleon. You've read the story, The Priest and the Acolyte?
Yes.
Was not the story that of a scandal about a priest and a boy who served him at the altar?
I read the story only once many months ago, and nothing would induce me to read it again.
You thought it immoral?
It was worse. It was badly written.
But did you not think it immoral and blasphemous?
I thought it violated every artistic canon of beauty.
That is not an answer.
It's the only one that I can give.
I wish to know if you thought the story blasphemous and immoral.
It filled me with disgust. The end was wrong.
Answer the question, sir. Did you or did you not consider the story blasphemous and immoral?
I told you I thought it disgusting. I don't think a play or a work of art ever has the slightest effect on morality.
In your own work, you pose as not being concerned about morality or immorality?
I don't know whether you use the word pose in any particular sense.
It is a favorite word of your own.
Is it? I have no pose in this matter. In writing a book or a play, I am concerned solely with literature, that is, with art. I aim not at doing good or evil, but in trying to create something which will have some quality of beauty.
Beauty? Listen, sir. Here is one of the phrases and philosophies for the use of the young, which you contributed to The Chameleon. Wickedness is a myth invented by good people to account for the curious attractiveness of others. You think that true?
I really think that anything I write is true. That is true in the actual sense of the word.
Religions die when they are proved to be true. Do you not think that a dangerous idea to put forward for the philosophy of the young?
An idea that is not dangerous is unworthy of being called an idea.
Pleasure is the only thing one should live for.
I think that the realization of oneself is the prime aim of life, and that to realize oneself through pleasure is finer than to do so through pain. I am on that point in accord with the ancients, the Greeks, Mr. Carson. It's a pagan idea.
There is something tragic about the enormous number of young men there are in England at the present moment who start life with perfect profiles and end by adopting a useful profession.
I think the young should have sufficient sense of humor.
You think that is humorous?
An amusing play upon words.
This is in your introduction to The Picture of Dorian Gray. There is no such thing as a moral or immoral book. Books are well written or badly written. And that expresses your view?
My view on art, yes.
Listen, sir. Here is the artist speaking to the young man, Dorian Gray. From the moment I met you, your personality had the most extraordinary influence over me. I quite admit that I adored you madly. Mr. Wilde, have you ever adored a young man madly?
I have never given adoration to anyone except myself.
Your answer then is that you have never had that feeling for a young man.
No, the whole idea was borrowed from Shakespeare, Mr. Carson, from Shakespeare's sonnets.
You imply then that Shakespeare did experience that feeling for a young man?
Mr. Carson, you are confusing the artist with the subject matter. No true artist has any ethical sympathies. Virtue and wickedness to him are only what the colors on a palette are to a painter, no more and no less.
I will proceed with your palette, Mr. Wilde. This letter, this prose poem that you wrote to Lord Alfred Douglas. Why should a man of your age address a boy nearly 20 years younger as my own boy?
I was fond of him.
Do you adore him?
No, but I have always admired him.
In this questionable letter...
It is a beautiful letter, Mr. Carson. It's a poem. You might as well cross-examine me as to whether King Lear or a sonnet of Shakespeare was proper.
Apart from art, Mr. Wilde?
I cannot answer apart from art.
Suppose a man who was not an artist had written this letter. Would you say it was a proper letter?
A man who was not an artist could not have written that letter.
I suggest there's nothing very wonderful in this red rose-leaf lips of yours.
A great deal depends upon how it is read.
Your slim, gilt soul walks between passion and poetry. Is that a beautiful phrase?
Not as you read it, Mr. Carson, but then you read it very badly.
I do not profess to be an artist, Mr. Wilde, and when I hear you give evidence, I am glad I am not.
I don't think my friend should talk like that, and pray do not criticize my friend's readings again.
Is that not an exceptional letter?
It's unique.
Have you often written letters in the same style as this?
No, I don't repeat myself in style.
We shall see. Here is another letter, which you also wrote to Lord Alfred Douglas. Will you read it?
No, I decline. I don't see why I should.
Then, if you will forgive my reading, Mr. Wilde, I will. Dearest of all boys, your letter was delightful red and yellow wine to me, but I am sad and out of sorts. Bosé, you must not make scenes with me. They wreck the loveliness of life. I cannot see you so Greek and gracious, distorted with passion. I will stop there. Is that an ordinary letter?
Everything that I write is extraordinary.
Is that the kind of letter one man writes to another?
It was not a prose poem like the other. It was a tender expression of my deep admiration for Lord Alfred.
In the same manner as the artist expresses himself in Dorian Gray, listen, sir, I have adored you extravagantly.
Do you mean financially?
Oh, yes. Financially. Do you think we're talking about finance?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't you? I hope I shall make myself very clear before I've done.
The court will now adjourn for lunch.
Oscar, you were superb. You made all the court rock with laughter, except my poor father, of course.
And Carson. I understand you were together at Trinity College in Dublin.
Yes, indeed, and he didn't disappoint me. He attacked me with all the bitterness of an old friend.
I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to wait in here.
I don't know what you mean by a perverted novel.
Then I suggest Dorian Gray as open to the interpretation.
Only to brutes and illiterates, and the views of illiterates on art are unaccountable.
I think our discussion on literature has lasted long enough. When did you first meet Alfred Wood?
Alfred Wood. I believe in January 1893.
Where did you meet him?
At the Café Royal. He had been sent to me by Lord Alfred, who telegraphed me from Salisbury.
Who was Wood?
As far as I know, he had no occupation. Lord Alfred thought I might find a situation for him.
You found no situation for him, but the first time you met him, you took him to supper?
Because I'd been asked to be kind to him.
You took him to a private room at the Florence restaurant in Soho?
Yes.
How much money did you give Wood then?
About £2.
Why?
I told you why, because I'd been asked to be kind to him.
But I suggest you first had immoral relations with him and then gave him the money?
Silence! Silence!
It is a monstrous suggestion and quite untrue.
And then, when you went to meet Wood, at the house of Alfred Taylor in Little College Street, did you not consider he'd come to levy blackmail? Blackmail on certain letters you'd written to Lord Alfred Douglas?
I did.
You went to meet him, in fact, to buy back your past.
No man is rich enough to buy back his past, Mr. Carson. I decided to face it.
And the way you faced it was by giving Wood £15 to go to America?
That is quite inaccurate. The letters were innocent, of no value.
But you did give him the money to leave England.
Yes, foolishly perhaps, out of pure kindness of heart, after he'd told me a pitiful story about himself.
And then you had a farewell luncheon with him again at the Florence?
Yes.
And again in a private room?
Yes.
And did Wood call you Oscar?
Yes.
And what did you call Wood?
His name is Alfred.
Did you not call him Alfie?
Certainly not. I never use abbreviations.
February 1892. You were staying at the Albemarle Hotel.
Yes.
Did you at that time become fond of your publisher's office boy and take him to dine there with you?
I deny that that was the position held at that time by Mr. Shelley, and I object to your description.
You may object all you like, sir. But how old was Mr. Shelley?
About 20.
We leave Mr. Shelley. We go on to Mr. Conway. Did you become intimate with a youth named Alphonse Conway?
Intimate? I met him.
He sold newspapers at the kiosk on the pier.
Really? That's the first I've ever heard of his connection with literature.
And how old is Mr. Conway?
About 18.
18. Did you give him anything?
I didn't give him any money.
But you did take Mr. Conway to Brighton.
Yes.
And provided him with a suit of blue serge?
Yes.
And a straw hat with a band of red and blue?
That, I regret to say, was his own unfortunate selection.
But you paid for it?
Oh, yes.
In order that he might look more like an equal?
Oh, no.
We leave Mr. Conway with his blue serge suit and his hatband of red and blue. We go on to Alfred Taylor. You know Alfred Taylor?
Yes.
You would go to his afternoon tea parties?
Yes.
At his rooms in Little College Street? Were they not peculiarly furnished? Double curtains always drawn across the windows and strangely perfumed?
It's not unusual for people to burn incense because of the pleasant aroma.
I said perfume, Mr. Wilde, not incense. Did you meet there a young man named Sidney Mavor?
Yes.
Did you not get this tailor to arrange dinners at which you could meet other young men?
No.
Did you not know that Taylor was notorious for introducing young men to older men?
I've never heard that in my life.
But he did introduce you to young men.
Oh, yes.
And you dined with them.
At Solferino's, at Kettner's, at the Florence, in public restaurants.
But always in a private room?
Yes, I prefer a private room.
Did Taylor introduce you to a youth named Charles Parker?
Yes.
How much money did you give Charles Parker?
£4 or £5.
Why? For what reason?
Because he was poor and I was fond of him. What better reason could I have?
Did you become friendly with Charles Parker's brother and invite them both to dine with you and Alfred Taylor?
Yes.
Did you know that one Parker was a valet and the other a groom?
No, but if I had, it wouldn't have made any difference. I don't care twopence what they were. I have a passion for civilizing the community.
We shall see how you civilize the community. During this dinner, did you not become more intimate with Charles than with his brother?
I don't know what you mean by intimate.
Treated him as an equal, served plenty of champagne. There was plenty of champagne, was there not, Mr. Wilde?
I did not press wine on them.
You did not stint them.
What gentleman would stint his guests?
What gentleman would stint the valet and the groom?
How dare you?
I must protest, my lord. And in the presence of Taylor and Parker's brother, did you not raise your glass of champagne in a toast to... You do drink champagne, do you not, Mr. Wilde?
Oh, yes. Iced champagne is a favorite drink of mine, strictly against my doctor's orders.
Never mind your doctor's orders, sir.
No, I never do.
Did you not raise your glass to Charles Parker, put your arm around his shoulder and say, "This is the boy for me"?
That is quite untrue.
Did not Charles Parker visit you in your rooms in St. James's Place?
I've asked him to tea.
How many times?
About 5 or 6.
And what improprieties took place there?
None, Mr. Carson, none whatever.
But what was there in common between this valet and yourself? What attraction had he for you?
I delight in the society of people much younger than myself, people who are gay and happy and careless and free. I recognize no social distinctions where youth is concerned. And to me, youth, the mere fact of youth, so wonderful, that I would rather spend half an hour talking to a street Arab than even be cross-examined in court by an old college mate.
Did you write Parker any beautiful letters?
I don't think I ever wrote him any letters.
But Parker did write to you.
I don't remember.
I will refresh your memory. Here is a letter which the valet Parker did write to you. Am I to have the pleasure of dining with you this evening? If so, kindly reply by messenger or telegraph above address. Trust we can spend a pleasant evening. And the letter is signed by Charles Parker.
I should like to see the handwriting.
I do not think the handwriting will come into question. Parker himself will be here, which will be even better.
Silence. Court will now adjourn till 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
And I'm afraid, Mr. Wilde, that you've been less than completely frank with me. Had certain facts in this case been brought to my attention, I might have advised you not to bring this prosecution. We expected Lord Queensberry to attack your writings as justification of the libel. We were quite prepared for that. Carson has moved into another area. A very dangerous area.
Put me into the witness box. Let me testify. I will tell the jury what a beast my father has been, how he has hung.
Lord Alfred, your difficulties with your father are completely irrelevant to the issue. Mr. Wilde, is there anything you think you should tell me about this Parker?
Nothing, Sir Edward, nothing whatever.
The altered circumstances of this case are now causing those who represent you the gravest anxiety.
I'm sorry to hear that. Anxiety is the last thing I would wish to share with anybody.
If there's anything you think I should know, I shall be at home all evening. Good night.
Rosie, where did your father get all this information?
The beast has had private detectives scouring London for weeks.
You knew? You knew all the time?
And now we come to one Fred Atkins. When did you meet Mr. Atkins?
Well, October, November, 1892.
And how old was he?
About 20.
20. And did you take this Atkins to Paris?
Yes, I must explain.
Answer the question, sir. Did you take Atkins to Paris?
The circumstances were that...
I ask only, did you take...
I was asked to take him.
My lord, the witness is not being responsive.
My lord, the witness is trying to answer, but...
The question Mr. Carson puts is, did you take Atkins to Paris? The witness will answer yes or no.
Surely, my lord, the witness can be permitted to explain the circumstances which led him to take Atkins abroad?
That, Sir Edward, can be developed in your re-examination. You may put the question again.
Thank you, my lord. Now, sir, did you take...
Yes.
You dined with him there?
Yes.
Gave him an excellent dinner?
I do everything excellently.
Did you give him plenty of wine with dinner?
If you mean, did I press wine on him? No, it's monstrous and I won't have it.
May I take it that no improprieties took place between yourself and Atkins in Paris?
My lord, I must violently protest the form of that question. Never have...
If it offends, I withdraw it. Did you know a youth named Ernest Scarf?
Yes.
He was introduced to you by Taylor?
Yes.
And how old was Mr...
20, Mr. Carson, 20.
Did you know that he was a valet and is a valet still?
No, I never met him in society.
But he's been in your society.
Which is more important.
Did you ever give Scarf any money?
No, never.
Or any presents?
I gave him a cigarette case. It's my custom to present cigarette cases.
Rather an expensive habit.
Possibly.
Sidney Mavor?
Sidney Mavor?
I said Sidney Mavor.
Sidney Mavor.
You remember, Mr. Mavor, you testified he was another of the young men you met through Taylor.
Yes.
October 1892, did he not stay the night with you at an hotel in Albemarle Street?
Yes, I took 2 rooms. He was with me because...
And did you find pleasure in his society that night?
Yes, at supper, and again at breakfast. We discussed literature.
We've had enough of literature. Walter Granger. Do you know Walter Granger?
Yes.
How old was he?
He was about 16. He was merely a servant at a house at Oxford where Lord Alfred had rooms.
Did you ever kiss him?
What?
Did you ever kiss him?
Oh, dear, no. He was a singularly plain boy. He was unfortunately extremely ugly. I pitied him for it.
Is that the reason why you didn't kiss him?
Mr. Carson, you are pertinently insolent.
Did you say that in support of your statement that you never kissed the boy?
Certainly not. It's a childish question.
Did you put that forward as the reason why you never kissed him?
No.
Why, sir, did you mention that this boy was extremely ugly?
For this reason. You ask me why I do not kiss a doormat. I'd say because I do not like to kiss doormats.
I speak not of a doormat, but of a boy called Granger. Why did you mention his ugliness?
Because I was stung by an insulting question.
Why did you mention his ugliness?
It is ridiculous to imagine that any such thing could possibly have occurred under any circumstances.
Then why did you mention his ugliness? I ask you.
You insulted me with an insulting question.
Why? Why?
Because I didn't. There was...
Why, sir? Why did you say...
No reason for you to...
Did you say that? Why did you say...
Insult
he was
me
ugly?
by suggesting such...
Why, sir?
Or trying to trap...
Why did you say...
Into admitting
did you
something
say that?
That never took place.
Why did you say... You say he was ugly, unfortunately ugly. Why, sir?
You sting me and insult me and try to unnerve me, and sometimes one says things flippantly when one...
Then you said it flippantly.
Yes, yes. Flippantly.
One more question, Mr. Wilde. Did any indecencies ever take place between you and Granger?
No. No. No.
That is all.
The court will now adjourn for 10 minutes.
And so far as Lord Queensberry is concerned, he withdraws nothing. From the beginning to the end, the father has been influenced by one hope alone, that of saving his son, at all risks and hazards to himself. And for that, Mr. Oscar Wilde attempts to send the father to jail, to brand him as a criminal. But, as my learned friend has said, we shall see. Before this case is over, you will be obliged to hear a good deal more of the extraordinary den which the man Taylor kept in Little College Street. The man Taylor, who found so many charming and youthful companions for Mr. Wilde, the artist. There was Charles Parker, a gentleman's servant, whose brother was also a gentleman's servant. Alphonse Conway, who sold newspapers on the pier at Worthing. Scarf, also a gentleman's servant. Atkins, about whom we know nothing as yet, except that he enjoyed excursions to Paris with the artist, Mr. Wilde. Now, what could Oscar Wilde, the accomplished dramatist, essayist, man of letters, and poet, what could he have in common with them? Not one of these youths is his equal, not in learning, not in culture, not in years. But, on the other hand, there is one thing they have in common, a curious similarity in the ages of each. Now, who are these young men, these lads? Who is Scarf? Mr. Wilde professed ignorance. he could not say. Conway, answer the same. Atkins, answer the same. Parker, answer the same. But Parker will identify himself fully. And Parker will tell you how Mr. Wilde indulged him in whiskies and sodas and iced champagne. That iced champagne in which Mr. Wilde indulged contrary to his doctor's orders. And finally, there is Wood. Alfred Wood. The elusive, globe-trotting, immigrating, appearing and disappearing Wood. Alfred Wood, the friend of Taylor, one of the little College Street lot. Why did Wilde pay his passage, give him a splendid farewell luncheon and ship him off to New York? To help a lad in distress, says Mr. Wilde. A charitable, a philanthropic act, says Mr. Wilde. It has been implied that if only Wood were here, he would tell us and sing the praises of Mr. Wilde's philanthropy, Mr. Wilde's charity, Mr. Wilde's efforts to civilize the community. But, gentlemen, as a matter of fact, Wood is here.
Silence in the court. I will have silence.
And will be examined before you. Wood will lay bare his relations with Mr. Wilde. His attempt, his successful attempt to blackmail Mr. Wilde. Wood will tell you, as will Parker.
There is no doubt in my mind whatsoever. You must withdraw the prosecution immediately.
Let my father win.
There is no hope of obtaining a verdict against Lord Queensberry. Carson will call the witnesses he has named. If we permit them to take the stand, the Director of Public Prosecutions will be obliged to order Mr. Wilde's arrest. By abandoning at this point, we might prevent Carson from calling his witnesses or taking their affidavits. In that event, there is a possibility that no further action would follow.
But that means my father wins.
That is your advice, Sir Edward.
That is my advice. Mr. Wilde, we have only minutes.
Very well.
You've made the only possible decision. I'll do what I can. I may not succeed. There's no need for you to return to court. As of this moment, you are quite free to go wherever you please.
But if Mr. Wilde, the community civilizing Mr. Wilde, were really anxious to assist the boy Conway, the very worst thing he could have done was to take the boy out of his natural sphere, to begin by giving him champagne luncheons, taking him to his hotel, treating him in a manner in which the boy could never in the future expect.
My lord, I beg leave to consult for a moment with my learned friend. I crave your lordship's indulgence while I interpose to make a statement. Mindful of my responsibility to the interests of my client, I must, my lord, look forward to this. It is not improbable that the jury might find in favor of Lord Queensberry in the question of the literature and the posing. But such a verdict might be interpreted outside as a conclusive finding with regard to all parts of the case. We feel we cannot resist a verdict of not guilty, but limited to the literature and the posing. Feeling confident that the jury can accept this very important limitation, we now withdraw the prosecution of Lord Queensberry and trust that this may make an end of the case.
credit. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Read all about it. No Queensbury credit.
Oscar, the train for Dover leaves in 3/4 of an hour. If we're going to pick up your luggage on the way to the station, we really ought to leave now.
Not just yet.
How obstinate you are. All your friends have told you to leave at once. You know my father is pressing for your arrest, yet still you hesitate. Why?
I'm not at all sure they will issue a warrant.
But supposing they do? You seem anxious to complete my father's triumph. One would think you wanted to go to prison to martyr yourself.
No point in running away if there's nothing to run away from. There's certainly nowhere to run to.
You must go abroad until the scandal has died down. If not for your sake, at least for mine.
Why did I say that to Carson? I shouldn't have said the boy was ugly.
No. It was perfectly true, of course. But you shouldn't have said it.
It was a fatal slip. You must forgive me, Bosie.
No. You were right. I was looking for a weapon. It is you who must forgive me.
We must forgive each other. Now, both of you must go and catch your train.
Oscar, I shall need some money.
Yes, of course.
My hotel here and expenses in Paris until you join me.
I'll write you a check.
Oscar, are you sure you can afford it?
You know that's the first time you've ever asked me that question. Yes, Bosie, I can afford it.
Thank you. Come with me now, while there's still time.
No, I can't. I'm expecting a visitor.
Au revoir, Oscar.
Bosie, you will have a glass of wine with me before you go. Do you remember the first time we drank wine together in your rooms in Oxford?
To Oscar Wilde, the Lord of Language, and the King of...
I hope you'll never have cause to regret it. Come in. Oh, it's only you.
We come for a luggage, sir.
Yes, of course. It's an extraordinary amount of luggage. Bosie always travels as if he was leaving home forever. This time, perhaps he is.
I think your papa will be in here, darling.
Papa! Papa! Did you know the man tried to take my photograph outside and Mother wouldn't let him? And there's a real lift in the hall, and when we go to Switzerland, I'm to have a real bed on the train with sheets and pillows just like at home.
I think I knew about the lift, but I didn't know about Switzerland.
This is a very grand room, Papa. Is this where we're going to live when we come back from Switzerland? I'd like to live here. The man said he would teach me how to work the lift, so may I go and work it now?
Not now, darling. We've come to see Papa.
You can go and work the lift if you like. And when you've learned how to do it, come back and take us all for a ride.
Promise?
Promise.
Thank you.
Switzerland will be wonderful just now. It'll do you and the boys good to get some sunshine.
I'm only going, Oscar, because my parents insist. I wish we could have all gone together.
No, no. It's far better this way. It's good of them to take so much responsibility off my hands just now. You'll do exactly what they ask.
They've already started asking, but I've refused. Do you know, Oscar, that they actually wanted me to change our name?
Might be best.
No, I'll not. I won't have the children ashamed of you.
Oh, my dear, you're so good to me, and I don't deserve it. I wish I could make you understand what happened. It was as if someone had written me into a play. I had to go on, scene by scene. I could see the final disaster, but I couldn't stop.
Darling, don't. Don't say any more. I didn't come here for explanation. I didn't come here to forgive you. I came because I love you.
I brought them up all by myself in the lift. They wanted to see you, Papa. I brought them up all by myself.
That was very clever of you, Cyril.
I'm sorry about this, Mr. Wilde, but he was very insistent.
No, not at all. I think it was most courageous of both you gentlemen. May I know your names?
Inspector, Mr. Richards, sir.
Mr. DeWitt.
Well, Mr. Richards, Mr. DeWitt, you met my son, and this is my wife. Now I expect you'll want to be getting along. Goodbye, my darling. Be a good boy, won't you, and look after your mother. You'll write to me from Switzerland, and I'll write to you from wherever I happen to be.
Can I take you down in the lift, Papa?
No, not this time, my darling. I think I'd better go by the stairs.
But he promised he'd let me take him down in the lift. He promised.
Day after day I sat in the dock, listening to the evidence offered for the Crown. A motley array of chambermaids, hall porters, waiters, and youths who had been introduced to me by Alfred Taylor. Some told the truth, others perjured themselves in the service of Lord Queensberry. But the blame for this final disaster lay not on his shoulders nor on those of the son whom he hated so bitterly. No man is destroyed except by his own hand, and so I blame only myself.
And you insist that the evidence given by the witnesses is untrue?
Yes.
You heard Wood, Atkins, Parker, Shelley, all untrue?
Yes.
Is it true that you met these young men through Alfred Taylor?
Yes, some of them.
And is it true that you visited Taylor's establishment in Little College Street?
It was his home.
But not the sort of street you would generally frequent. Rather a rough neighborhood?
Possibly. It was very near the Houses of Parliament.
When you wrote letters to Lord Alfred Douglas, why did you choose the words, "my own boy," as a mode of address?
It was a fantastic, extravagant way of writing. It does not seem to me a question of whether a thing is right or proper, but of literary expression.
I did not use the words proper and right. But was it decent?
Decent? There was nothing indecent about it.
So you think that a decent way for a man of your age to address a man of his?
It was a beautiful way for an artist to address a young man of culture and charm. Decency does not enter into it.
Doesn't it? Do you know the meaning of the word?
Yes.
Did Lord Alfred Douglas read you his poem, Two Loves?
Yes.
Listen, Mr. Wilde. I shall read from the poem called Two Loves. But I was love, and I was wont to be alone in this fair garden till he came unasked by night. I am true love. I fill the hearts of boy and girl with mutual flame. Then, sighing, said the other, have thy will. I am the love that dare not speak its name. Did Lord Alfred explain that poem?
I think it is quite clear.
No question as to what it means.
No.
It is clear, is it not, that the love described relates to natural and unnatural love?
No.
What is this love that dare not speak its name?
The love that dare not speak its name in this century is such a great affection of an elder for a younger man, as there was between David and Jonathan, such as Plato made the very basis of his philosophy, such as you find in the sonnets of Michelangelo and Shakespeare. It is that deep spiritual affection that is as pure as it is perfect. It dictates and pervades great works of art, like those of Shakespeare and Michelangelo, and those two letters of mine, such as they are. It is in this century misunderstood, so much misunderstood that it may be described as the love that dare not speak its name. And on account of it, I am placed where I am now. It is beautiful, it is fine,
It is the noblest form of affection. There is nothing unnatural about it. It is intellectual, and it repeatedly exists between an elder and a younger man, where the elder has intellect, and the younger all the hope and joy and glamour of life before him. But that this should be so, the world does not understand. The world mocks it, and sometimes puts one in a pillory for it.
If there is the slightest manifestation of feeling, I shall have the court cleared.
Did you ask Sidney Mavor to stay all night at the Albemarle Hotel?
Yes, I wanted to.
Did you know what he was?
No.
No occupation?
I don't know.
Wood?
No.
Parker?
No.
Scarf?
No.
Atkins?
No.
That is all, Mr. Wilde.
Gentlemen, have you agreed on your verdict?
We have.
And do you find the prisoner at the bar guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Oscar Wilde, the crime for which you have been convicted is so bad that one has to put stern restraint upon oneself to prevent oneself describing, in language which I do not wish to use, sentiments that must rise to the breast of every man of honor who has heard the details of this terrible trial. It is useless for me to address you. People who can do these things must be dead to all sense of shame. I shall, under such circumstances, be expected to pass the severest sentence that the law allows. In my judgment, it is totally inadequate for such a case as this. The sentence of the court is that you be imprisoned and kept to hard labor for 2 years.
$3874.
Oscar.
Robbie, how charming of you to be here at such an early hour. You can't possibly have got up. You must have sat up.
It's wonderful to see you again.
Only you would know exactly the right tie to wear at 8 o'clock in the morning to welcome a friend who's been away.
I wanted to be the first to welcome a man who's now free.
Am I free?
Here's a cab.
You know, Robbie, prison's completely changed me. From now on, I'm going to live only for my work.
Delighted to hear that, Oscar.
I don't want to show myself in London until I've written a new play. The public knows a man only by the last thing he's done. Now they would see in me only the convict.
Oh, no.
Yes.
No. Well, where will you go?
Paris. Paris delights me still. I've chosen a new name for my new life. It's a beautiful name because it's going to be a beautiful new life. Sebastian Melmoth.
Sebastian Melmoth, yes. That's a charming name, charming.
Robbie, do you have any letters or messages for me from Constance or the children?
No, but they're well. They're living in Genoa with her brother. Her brother's now legal guardian to the children, you know?
Yes. When I've produced a new work of art, I may be able to join them.
Yes. Yes, of course. Oh, I brought some sandwiches and a flask of brandy. Would you like something?
Oh, how kind of you. I'd love a sandwich.
Yeah.
But I don't think Sebastian Melmoth would drink brandy at 8 o'clock in the morning. Waiter.
No, forgive me, monsieur, but the patron wishes for the bill to be paid.
I had hoped to live on in the patron's memory by not paying the bill.
Well, if only monsieur could pay something.
Yeah. That's 3 I've paid for and 3 the patron's paid for. That's justice.
Merci, monsieur.
What beautiful flowers you're watering.
Flowers, monsieur?
Tulips, lilies, and roses. Don't you see them?
Ah, oui, monsieur. Yes, beautiful flowers, monsieur.
Absent. It helps you to see things as you wish they were. Then you see them as they're not. Finally, you see them as they really are. That's the most horrible thing in the world.
Oscar,
things as you wish they were.
I knew you would be here. Melmoth?
You mustn't call me Melmoth. Oscar Wilde is not a name of which to be ashamed.
I thought you preferred to be known as Melmoth.
No, I only use that name to spare the blushes of the postman. To my friends and to posterity, I shall always be Oscar Wilde.
Now, listen. Have you been writing lately?
I can't. I thought I could, Robbie, when I came out of prison 2 years ago, but when I take up my pen to write, all the past comes back. I can't bear the thoughts. It's only when I'm talking that I can forget a little.
You must listen to me.
No. You must listen to me. I'm telling one of my stories, and all the stars have come out to listen. When Jesus was minded to return to Nazareth, Nazareth was so changed he no longer recognized his own city. The Nazareth where he had lived was filled with lamentation and weeping, and this city was filled with laughter and joy. And behold, Christ came out of the house, and in the street he saw. What was it he saw? I can't remember. I can't remember. My beautiful story. What was it he saw, Robbie? Waiter, I perceive that I'm drunk. I find alcohol taken persistently and in sufficiently large quantities produces all the effects of intoxication. I've had my hand on the moon. Why should I try and rise a little from the ground? Will you play something gay?